they should know that there are entities on our side that view that as a good opportunity to develop in other ways, increase sanctions. It was somewhat of a threat. But we have large conglomerates like the Egyptian or Ascom that are heading the big visible changes of cell phones and the hotel, etc. But we did not see any visible signs. We did talk to businessmen who were traveling to and from the rosin port, and things are not nearly as good there. There's very little electricity. The casinos are virtually empty. Very, very little Chinese tourism even still coming to the casinos. The British diplomats had been up there recently, and they thought it looked awful. So it's not the port that in 2008 they were saying was the next big caisson project.
Yeah, let me, if I may, just add to that. I think there's two things. One, you'd indicated that we were probably limited in taking our pictures. Only on one occasion did the North Koreans say, don't take that picture. Can I see if you did? And that was at the International Exhibition Hall, where they housed all these 233,000 gifts that had been given to Kim Il-sung. There was a military guard there. What we were taking a picture of is the fact that our vehicle had broken down, and these guys were trying to push it to get it to jump start. And in the background was a guard. And they said, oh, he's not going to want your picture taken. Did you take a picture? And we said, no, here, you can take a look. Otherwise, they didn't care, and you saw by the pictures, we had pictures of military guys anyway. So there wasn't, in a sense, a limitation. Of course, we weren't any place that was sensitive as well.
There's a reason the pictures aren't wonderful photography either. I'm walking like this and taking the pictures down here.
Although I had a bigger camera myself, and I was taking pictures. The other thing that I would say on the analytical side was I had no expectations that the current sanctions were hurting Pyongyang. And what you have seen and what we have seen and what I would suggest to you from my 10th visit over 12 years is a steady improvement in the quality of life in Pyongyang. It's relatively low. I mean, there's nobody here, buying a condo for their summer house in Pyongyang. But from a Pyongyang point of view, things have gotten better along the way. But again, I wouldn't have expected the sanctions to kick in. My own analysis is that the North Koreans, in inviting Steve Bosworth to come, are trying to break what to now has been the solidity of the five, and the fact that these sanctions, 1874, actually have some meaning, from my point of view. And the North Koreans were looking down the road and saying, I don't like this picture. I don't like where it's going. I need to try to change that. But there's no expectation that there's an immediacy of the effects, particularly in Pyongyang. Maybe on the outskirts that we just don't see.
Next question.
Thank you. My name is Juan from the Seoul Broadcasting System. I have a follow-up question about the history you talked with the people. Later, you have a lot of experience to talk about this kind of issue with Lincoln. Lincoln was the only person who talked about the peace treaty when you stayed in Pyongyang. And what was your first impression when you heard about the peace treaty from Lincoln? Was it the message they want you to send to deliver the American government, and what's the reaction from the American government?
Yeah, my own assessment is that this is an issue that they have always talked about periodically, but they haven't focused as a main issue. And my own view is that in the period of time prior to and then during Lee Gun's trip to the United States and his discussions there, when he went back to Pyongyang, they had a brainstorming session and tried to figure out what their approach would be to this, and have come on this issue as a singular, rational issue from their point of view that gets at the heart of a lot of issues. U.S. presence on the Korean Peninsula, U.S. extended nuclear deterrence, the issue of bilateral negotiations, all of that. So it's developed into a theme in which they can use negotiations to try to maintain a bilateral dialogue with the United States. And again, my initial reaction, as I'd indicated, was a kind of a flashback to 2005, that this was a development of a negotiating device. Now, the fact that I think it is a negotiating device doesn't mean that they now hold it as an important issue for which they're going to hold out for. And we'll see that develop. I'm not quite sure where this will go. That's my initial impression.
And what was the reaction from the American government when you proposed that?
Well, I don't want to speak on behalf of the American government, and I probably ought not to talk about their reaction to what I've said. As I indicated in my conversation with Ambassador Bosworth, I didn't expect any of this to be a big surprise to him. So I think it's a matter of focus in how they've developed this. And I certainly would have anticipated that what they were doing is doing a dry run through the development of their talking points that they were using, testing them out, if you will, and probably will try to do a refinement before they sit down in that interim of a couple of weeks when they talk with Steve Bosworth. I think we all expect that. But what I would hope is that the U.S. and our allies are slightly better prepared for this. I don't think this comes as a big surprise to anyone.
So nobody thinks it's a news. Nobody is interested in that kind of. That is the proposal. Nobody thinks.
Well, you'll have to ask them.
Jack and Nicole, should we take 3 questions at a time?
Well, we can try if I can remember them. Maybe you make me write them down. Go ahead.
Right. John, then I, and Sean.
I had a question on what we've been talking about the Chinese. So you mentioned when Jeff trip.
Yes.
Can we talk to you about it in sort of laudatory terms? Is it, look, these guys are on our side, or we're going to say it, or how do you frame that? And what's your analysis of the Chinese position in this game of chicken world?
I'll just continue first. Thank you so much for doing this. But so State Department said repeatedly that the purpose of this Ambassador Bosworth's trip is just to have discussion of the resumption of the six-week talks. But North Koreans, as you said, are interested in broader issues such as peace treaties. So do you think the U.S. will eventually have to have comprehensive bilateral talks in order to get them back to the nuclear talks? What would you recommend to the U.S. government in terms of the unforced issues?
Sure. Just a bit of a follow-up to a previous question. Just more from an analytical standpoint, do you think talk of a peace treaty, negotiations of peace treaty are a complete non-starter?
Yeah. Okay, well, let me take John's question first. Lee Gooden had no elaboration in terms of what is the relationship. It was a point to be made in terms of, at this occasion with the Chinese premier, their leader, what he's doing is setting the stage for that rationalization of a turnaround from earlier in the year was, we will never come back to six-party talk, to, well, yeah, maybe we will. And so the point was, in this environment, the leader had explained to the Chinese that they were taking the initiative to change this situation, a poor situation between the United States and North Korea, by allowing Bosworth to come, releasing the 2 journalists. I didn't know earlier that was part of his rationale, and that the leader had in fact reconfirmed the commitment to the denuclearization process. And he went one step further, and we've always heard this, and that was, this was the last dying wish of Kim Il-sung. And so there's continuity from father to son, completing the circle. But my experience with the North Koreans, they don't spend any time talking, particularly in laudatory terms, about the Chinese. To the contrary, you occasionally hear or see suggestions that they just want to have an arm's length relationship with the Chinese. The analysis, though, in terms of relationship, if I may go down that road, I think what we saw and the attitudes and at least this posture